Streaming live via the internet. Welcome to ISP Radio, your weekly source for ISP-related news, events, and interviews with industry experts. If you deliver internet via fiber optic, wireless, coax, or any other way, you're in the right place. Chat live with us weekly via ispradio.com every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time. And now a brief word from our sponsors. Link Technology, providing ISP consulting, support, and hardware for wireless ISPs. TowerCoverage.com, providing online RF coverage maps. Mimosa Networks, providing high-density, high-bandwidth radio products. Advanced LLC, providing retail and wholesale advanced communication services by matching providers with your bandwidth needs. And by Sitel, providing reliability in surge suppression. And now your host for ISP Radio, Steve Grabiel and Dennis Burgett.
Well, good morning and welcome back to another adventure in ISP Radio. I'm your host, Steve Grabiel. I'm broadcasting from my house in Sandia Park, New Mexico, and I've got Dennis on the line in St. Louis. And right now I am getting the snow that Dennis got last week at my house here.
We didn't get any snow.
You told me you were going to get some.
Yeah,
but anyways,
well, you know how the weather guys are. They're wrong 90% of the time.
Well, and like you said, it's particularly difficult in St. Louis to judge the weather because of the location, I guess, huh?
Yeah. Well, you know, our adage is this: if you don't like the weather in St. Louis, wait 5 minutes. So,
that's true here in Albuquerque as well.
Last Wednesday, they were calling for like 4 inches of snow overnight and all that kind of stuff. I literally got a dusting, if that. I mean, it snowed, but we didn't get anything, and it was like 4 degrees outside. Last Sunday, this past week, so 5 days later, it was 72 degrees out during the day.
Yeah, that's totally out here. Yesterday, I was up on a tower, and it was 68 degrees out. And then today, it's cold and snowing, and then tomorrow it's supposed to be 69 and sunny.
Fun. Does wonders on your sinuses.
Yeah, folks, I'm a little bit punchy today because yesterday I got off the tower and then drove my truck with my radios up to Denver to visit with Daniel of SAF. Got up in Denver 6 hours later and worked with him till about 10:30 and then turned around and got in the truck and came back. And I just got in about an hour and a half ago, so I'm a little bit punchy. But that was an adventure and driving in a blizzard on the way back. But we're ready to go for a good show. So, Dennis, what kind of any new news out there for us?
Well, we have a whole plethora of information and news going on. Remember, we got this Title II thing going on. And what originally was supposed to happen is Chairman Wheeler was going to release this information about Title II, his so-called plan. And then when he releases that, he actually released it at the beginning of the week, I think it was last Thursday. But he released it to just the commissioners, and he specifically said that they wish to keep it quiet. So this week, Commissioner Pai put out a press release, and this is another FCC commissioner. This press release commented on Chairman Wheeler and President Obama's plans to regulate the Internet. Now, what amazes me is, and it's a great thing, we actually have a link on ISP Radio. If you go to our archives page, right in today's session, you'll see a link that shows the video of Commissioner Pai doing this press release. Excellent press release, excellent information, but here's the very first thing he had to say. Let's try hitting play and unmuting it, and then we'll actually play, right? Here we go.
The American people are being misled about President Obama's plan to regulate the Internet. Last week's carefully managed rollout was designed to downplay the plan's massive intrusion into the Internet economy and to shield many critical details from the public. Indeed, Chairman Wheeler has made it clear that he will not release the document to the public, even though federal law authorizes him to do so.
So with that, right off the bat, I mean, very, very powerful, very first statement, very powerful, and I'm sure that's what he wanted. But it is actually a really, really great listen. The video is like 45 minutes, but most of it is questions. It's probably only 10, 15 minutes of actual press release. Really good information. He also released a fact sheet about it. really good information. Everybody should really look over this. Now, after he had said that, he went on to talk about one of the major topics for concern, which is rate regulation. Here's what he had to say about the current plan as it is released, as it pertains to rate regulation.
I have now read the 332-page plan, and it is worse than I had imagined. The claim that President Obama's plan to regulate the Internet does not include rate regulation is flat out false. The plan clearly states that the FCC can regulate the rates that Internet service providers charge for broadband Internet access, for interconnection, for transit, in short, for the core aspects of Internet services. The plan repeatedly states that the FCC will apply Sections 201 and 202 of the Communications Act, including the rate regulation provisions, to determine whether the prices charged by broadband providers are unjust or unreasonable.
Lots of really great information. And again, I really urge everybody to go listen to this because it's very important. And I do find it very appalling that the document is not released. The chairman said it is not to be public. Now, later
what's interesting in that, too, Dennis, is Commissioner Pai was the gentleman that spoke to us at WISPalooza last year, praising our industry for what we do. He's a good guy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and this is really good information. And like I said, everybody should really go out and take a look at it because it's really good. Now, just to paraphrase a little bit more, later in the press release, Commissioner Pai also mentioned that the FCC use of Title II to regulate broadband basically allows the government to micromanage the Internet. And as Title II regulations will start, what we're going to see is probably a lot of forbearance. In other words, we're going to forbear various sections due to small business, whatever the case may be, but that forbearance is going to get the Title II, basically everybody to accept Title II, because they're forbeared from it. So, hey, that's great. But after a while, expect regulation to ratchet up and that forbearance to fade. So at some point in time, we could very easily see the FCC setting pricing. Very ugly stuff overall. Now,
just like what Forbes mentioned last week, and it's just the frog in the boiling pot of water.
Oh, yeah. Now, since the FCC only needs 3 commissioners to say yes on this issue, they're voting on it later this month. We are likely to see, and this is what a lot of people are saying, this is no guarantee, of course, but we're very likely to see the FCC adopt Title II regulation later this month. Now, the FCC chairman is keeping the data from the public. Personally, that shows me that there's something to hide. But with all this, don't fret, because even though this is going to come to a vote later on this month, as soon as it occurs, we're probably going to see lots of legal action. Verizon and several other companies have already stated that the FCC, if it adopts Title II Internet regulation, will immediately sue the FCC, saying that they don't have that legal authority. And I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other groups that are going to say, no, you can't do this, and basically have all this kind of legal action. Also, once the FCC adopts Title II, we're also likely to see a wave of legislation from Congress, which both the legal action and legislation actions is all going to get bogged down in courts, and it's all going to be up in the air for a couple of years. At least that's my take on it. May it be quicker? May it be longer? It very well may, but there's definitely going to be a delay. We're not going to see all of a sudden the rules change in one day. So keep that in mind, is that vote is not the end all, okay? What's going to happen is over the next year or two, we're going to see how it all plays out once it goes from that. In the end, though, this is what I feel. I feel that there is going to be a decrease very quickly here, coming soon, in private investment. We've actually already seen this occurring with the original plan stating that, hey, we want to do this, and other industries going, well, hold on, we're going to stop our deployment because we don't, this may not work. So we are going to see the decrease in private investment over in broadband. And as the fears over this regulation continue, the cost of being regulated is going to scare other investors and small business owners into either selling, or they're going to merge, or they're going to basically stop putting money in. They're going to start hoarding their cash because they don't know what the regulations in the regulatory area is going to actually cover and what they will need. Okay?
That makes sense.
This is actually kind of a bass-ass backwards way, excuse the pun here, but it's basically a way to prove that CAF funding, government internet funding versus private investment is needed, because the private investment is going to be scared off by the heavy hand of government regulation. So lots of information there. I really, really recommend everybody to go out. Again, ispradio.com, hit the archive under today's show. There's already a link there that you can go to see Commissioner Pye's video. Definitely really worth a listen. Okay. Now, on to other news. Upcoming events. February 18th, so that's next week, we're going to have Dan from Viasat talking about their product offering live. So that's next week. We'll have Viasat. And then less than 2 weeks away, we're going to have WISP America starting Monday, February 23rd, running till Thursday, the 26th. Be sure to check out wispa.org for more information. I do not know if we're going to have a live broadcast from there, because I know I have sessions during our normal time. Imagine that always happens. But I'm sure we will have a recap the following week as well. And finally, to end our news segment on a sad note, Rebecca Rini has passed away unexpectedly on Sunday night. Rebecca was a fixture in the WISP community, as well as an enthusiastic, creative, and effective advocate. She will ruffle any feathers and rattle any cages if it meant achieving results for her clients. She will be missed, and I do wish the family all of our condolences in this time. So, with that said, Steve, back to you.
Well, that's some sad news, but we must move forward. And like you said about the Title II stuff, if you didn't hear last week's show and you're listening in today, go to the archive and listen to it. There's some call to actions that you as an ISP owner can do, and I took the time to do it myself. It was really simple, real easy. Just take some time to make your voice heard. Well, today we're going to be focusing a little bit on your business, particularly how you bill your clients and the such, getting paid. That's probably the most important part of this business that we as geeks kind of forget. So on today's show, we have Bill Schoolfield. He's the principal partner of BillMax out of Dallas, Texas, that area. So, Bill, are you there?
I am.
So, Bill, tell us a little bit about BillMax, how you guys got started in doing what you're doing, and tell us about BillMax.
All right, Steve, thank you very much, and Dennis, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really kind of impressed with what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
First, I was going to brag about the weather. It's 68 here. It's sunny, and we're actually on the west side of Dallas-Fort Worth, and we're in Cowtown, and we're real sensitive about people calling us from Dallas. So
okay, sorry.
It's very different over here. But anyway, just gigging you a little bit there. Okay, so BillMax, I would hope that by now most people know who we are, and the name will give it away. We're a company that develops and markets and services BillMax, the product. And that's a product basically for handling customer care, billing, subscriber provisioning, those sorts of things. Really, everything that boils down to your back office operations. Mm-hmm. We've been in business for over 20 years now. We started as an ISP back in 1994. Like a lot of ISPs, we didn't know what we were doing in the beginning. And we had really a lot of the same issues that our ISPs still face today. Some of them have changed a bit, but by and large, the core set of issues are still there. And then now with WISP, you have quite a few more areas of opportunity, I would say, or problems. But we did start out as an ISP, and we developed BillMax out of necessity. Back then, at least, there really wasn't too many offerings for an ISP in terms of customer care billing and provisioning. In fact, there was virtually none. So we developed BillMax for our own use initially, internally. And then from there, sort of word got out, and before we knew it, we were offering it to other ISPs. And then, eventually we sold the ISP business around 2000, 2001 timeframe, and have been a software company since. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a brief overview of, where we're at. We can talk a lot more about, where we're headed, and, but that's our origin. It's a, familiar story, I think, for a lot of people. I think maybe some of our competitors may have, had a similar kind of genesis. But that's kind of how we got our start in this business.
And I want to thank you for being on the show. Before the show, you were telling us about you've been burning the candle at both ends and taking time out to be on the show. I really appreciate it. It should...
Yeah, I appreciate that. We're very busy at the moment. We've had, we're rolling out quite a few new clients, and I've been off site a couple of days and sort of burning the midnight oil. And but so I guess Steve, you and I are kind of running on half empty right now.
Yeah. So let's get into the nuts and bolts. I'm an ISP and I run QuickBooks, and I know I should be smacked upside the head for doing that, but I've opened my eyes and I see the need to do something. And what's the pain points for an ISP going from how I've run business forever to a BillMax solution?
Well, I mean, it's whenever you switch any systems, there are going to be pain points. It's just unavoidable.
Right.
The question really is, how easy can you make it, right? Mm-hmm. And so, in some cases, you're definitely going to go through this transition where data is being moved from one system to another. That's unavoidable, but. There are no two systems that are exactly alike, and their methodologies and the way of doing things is slightly different. So it will be a paradigm shift some way. It's just not going to be exactly what you were doing before in your prior billing system.
But for the better.
Well, one would hope, right?
Yeah.
And, the systems that are on the market today, and we're really fortunate nowadays. I count, at least 6 companies that we compete with routinely, and there's probably another 6 more. But, there are, sort of lost my train of thought where I was headed with that.
The pain points of an ISP going from what they've been doing to
right. Well, so
converting to something that's going to be better.
It's going to depend on really knowing the capabilities of the system that you're moving to. Hopefully you would have done that, during the evaluation stage. Mm-hmm. But you really, really want to know that system very well. It's not like purchasing a car. You really have to kind of open the hood, unfortunately, and learn the details, its capabilities, and its way of doing things. Mm-hmm. So I would strongly encourage people that are doing, that are on the market, that are looking for systems, to spend that time up front to really delve into details. I know it's kind of tedious and not fun for most people who would rather be doing other things in the ISP industry, like putting up radios and messing with towers and whatnot.
Exactly.
But it's really a requirement, I think. So, and if you've done your homework and your evaluation, you're halfway there. So when it comes time to implementation, you can make sure that your implementation goes smoothly.
Now, you mentioned about lifting the hood and checking the engine. How does BillMax allow prospects to do that?
Well, we our sort of sales cycle is, once we are engaged with somebody, we'll the first thing we'll do is actually schedule a time to do a demo, usually through GoToMeeting. Mm-hmm. And that's like a session that might last an hour or longer, depending on what questions come up and and what the level of interest is. Right. So we always start with that process. From there, we can leave you with our system, a version of our system in the cloud. That's sort of like a means by which you can, try out things, and not in a production sense, but build invoices or see how customer setup takes place, that sort of thing. Kind of get more familiar with the system on a more leisurely pace. Mm-hmm. And you can use that little sandbox for upwards to 4 weeks, 6 weeks if you wish. Mm-hmm. If you really want to test the system, you'll want to basically get a demo license from us and download your own copy. Because once you've done that, you'll be able to really fully understand the system and operate it. And what I mean by that is, plug some data into it, and we have a testing methodology whereby we can actually advance the sort of clock, as it were, and march through a number of months, without having to wait to see that happen, obviously. So you could, set up your system, for instance, and roll the date forward for a year. And then take a look at the bills, the timing, when payments were obtained, what happens when people are suspended. All those sorts of activities is really not really possible on a demo that we would provide online. But, certainly if you have your own instance in a demo copy, then you can actually do that sort of detailed what-if scenario.
Mm-hmm. Dennis, do you have any questions?
No, I mean, keep going. I mean, I guess really probably what customers are going to be interested in is, what sets you apart? Why where'd it come from? And what sets you apart? What do you think is probably some of the best features of the product? And what does a person expect to I hate to use the word spend, but what is a person expected to need to have to do that type of conversion?
Okay.
And why does QuickBooks not work? Why not?
Let me take that one first. It's Steve. It's interesting that you're still using QuickBooks, because really. It seems to be almost unanimous that that's where people start. Okay, so what happens is you're focused on building the ISP side of the business, and you're not really. Most people are not technically. They're not financial people that are in this industry. It's really run by the technologists, the people who understand networks, and the people who understand radios and whatnot. So it's always an afterthought, and if I could encourage anyone to try to look at the problem or to look at least at the same time these sorts of issues as you're building your business, you'll be better off. The knock on QuickBooks is it's fine for what it is, and in fact many of our clients still use it, but they're really only using it for general ledger type activities, not actually the billing of their subscriber base. But the problem with QuickBooks are numerous, really. One, it doesn't scale well. So beyond a few hundred subscribers, if you've got that data in QuickBooks, you're going to eventually run into problems.
Like what kind of problems, Bill?
It might slow down. I know of a number of cases where it just would crash, things of that nature.
Just too big.
It's not really designed. I mean, it's no knock on QuickBooks because it's not really designed with an ISP in mind.
Right.
Okay. It's designed for several hundred customers, maybe 50 vendors and payroll of a couple dozen people. That's QuickBooks. Okay. So throwing QuickBooks at an ISP is, you can get by with it for a while. So that's one point. The other point is you're never going to have the level of integration or any attention to the specific problems that you have as an ISP or a WISP. It just isn't going to exist, right? You don't really have, it's more of a shrink-wrapped application that you would install on your desktop, or now they have a version on the web. But, it's an application that is sort of self-contained, and you don't really have any ability to make any modifications or integrate it very well with any other systems. Mm-hmm. And that integration is a big deal because really, as it turns out, some of your best opportunity, if you're looking across the spectrum of all the systems and things you need, is it's unlikely that you're always going to find it at a price point you can afford in one package. So what you end up doing invariably is, you pick and choose a little bit. And so you want systems that will integrate easily with other systems, right? So if you've got a billing system and there is a scheduling module from another company, right? Well, BillMax has, and it does have in one of its own versions that we sort of deploy on a limited basis. It does have a scheduling module, but is it best of breed? Standalone product? No. I mean, there are better products out there. So really what you want to look for is a system that can be easily integrated with other components that you need to run your business. Right, so those are some of the reasons for why QuickBooks, it's okay to start, but you really, you really need to sort of move on from it. I encourage you to look at what we have to offer in that area, Steve.
Sure. You brought up a good point, hosted versus box. So say I'm interested in what BillMax has to offer. Do I have to buy a box and install software on it, or is it all hosted on the web?
Well, given our origins, you have to recall that we started way back in '94. So back then, and well up through maybe the last 5 or 6 years ago, the notion of hosting something quote in the cloud, which is a term that didn't exist back then. It didn't. That capability really either didn't exist. Or it just didn't work in practice very well. That has since changed, obviously. So with BillMax, you have the option of either deploying it locally on your own servers, or we can host it for you, or you can have it hosted at Amazon or some other virtual facility. The choice is really up to you. Whatever you're most comfortable with.
Now, say I want to host it myself and buy my own box. What am I buying, and what do I got to put on there?
Well, for a company of your size, you could throw just about any hardware at it. I would advocate or suggest that you look at buying a quality server class equipment. But
of course.
But the reality is for small service providers, I would define small in this instance of maybe 2,500 subscribers or less. virtually any hardware will work, right?
Okay.
So, I mean, your costs are really not so much in hardware. It's really the setup and some of the, if you've got data to convert and things of that nature, that's one-time cost. And then, of course, with a product like BillMax, there's an ongoing cost to use it.
Right. And you mentioned data conversion, and you guys have done this for 20 years. Are those data conversions from QuickBooks to BillMax relatively simple? Do you step us through on what you need, or do you, for that cost, take the QuickBooks file and pull the stuff out that you need to drop into BillMax?
Yeah. Well, what happens is, no two customers are exactly alike, and part of the problem with QuickBooks in particular is it doesn't really have some of the basic structures for holding the data that you might have in your, that we might need. Mm-hmm. So you end up finding elements of data in different places in people's QuickBooks, right? So they'll by convention they may stick something over in this descriptive field here, and somewhere else another ISP is used QuickBooks in a different way. Mm-hmm. So every conversion is different. If you use our conversion services or our consulting services, we'll sort of sort through all those details for you and basically get the data converted from one system to the next. And that's true for whether it's QuickBooks or if it's for any of our competitors. We've done conversions from all the companies that you're familiar with.
Right, like maybe Peachtree or something?
Well, we've done Peachtree. We've also done, of course, all our competitors in the industry. So ISP-specific products.
Gotcha. So we can host it on our own. We can do cloud. That's good to know. Or some other service. That's good to know. We've talked about the pain points to an ISP in this conversion. Of course, there's going to be a little bit of pain no matter what, but it's really in the benefit. And Dennis and I had a discussion about a month ago about your payment gateways and all that stuff. And Dennis threw out there that, and I really agree with him, the time that you should do that, setting yourself up with a ISP specific billing system is as soon as you can afford it or get involved into it. You probably would agree, right?
Yeah, I would say actually you bring up a good point with payment gateways and processing. Of course, BillMax has that built in, and of course all our competitors do too. So we handle the automatic processing of payments. Whether they be credit cards or electronic checks, which is a form of bank debit. But getting back to QuickBooks for a moment, one issue with QuickBooks is you're pretty much locked in to their merchant services, and their rates, quite frankly, they're just not competitive to rates that you can generally get elsewhere. And this is apart from the ISP industry. Generally, their rates are kind of high.
So you're saying that by converting, an ISP could realize some cost savings?
Absolutely. What,
if you could throw a percentage out there, what would you think?
I'm sorry?
If you would throw a percentage out there, what would you think?
What percentage of what? Of
percent of savings, yes.
Well, I can't give you a categorical answer because it depends on the circumstances for the ISP, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're shopping for a credit card or merchant services, they basically go through an underwriting process where they're going to look at your company, how new you are, what kind of credit history you have, what kind of revenue you do, okay? And then if you've been processing cards before, what's your rate of chargeback? So all those things go into the calculation of what kind of rates are possible. I can tell you that I have a new company going online right now that was using QuickBooks, and they told me this a couple of days ago that that BillMax with and this is just the savings that you can realize from credit card processing. Okay, they've determined that BillMax, with all the consulting to get them converted, moved over. Well, all of that will be a wash within, I think you said, 4 to 6 months.
Wow.
Okay, so there's a compelling reason to do it right there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll just toss this out. I mean, you figure on. I'm just going to use some average numbers. So this is may or may not be. Let's say you bill $100,000 a year, and average QuickBooks will actually be higher than what most people think, because what QuickBooks and those other companies are going to do is they're going to sit there and they're going to give you what they call swipe rates, and that means card is present, you're actually magnetically swiped it, and then they give you another rate. They give you a card not present rate. And that card not present rate is actually usually higher. So I'm gonna figure, probably almost 3.5% on that. So that's something like $3,500 on $100,000 a year that you're spending just in swipe fees alone. When we look at that at $100,000, I'll make sure my math is right, but that sounds right. And then all of a sudden you go, okay, well, what if I work on this? And Link Technologies had the same issue, because all of our credit cards that we use are pretty much the same thing. They're all not present. So we focused down onto getting that changed. We focused on getting the best rate possible. And to be perfectly honest with you, if you could take that and come down to, 2%, there's $1,500 in savings right off the top. And in many cases, depending on how much money and how much investment they need to do, you can actually probably get below 2% in many cases. My big problem with that whole industry is that we end up getting these people that they want to sit there and they want to say, oh, you show me your bill and I'm going to give you a better rate. Well, why can't they just give you the best rate possible to begin with? That's just something that pisses me off whenever I call someone and say, hey, I want a better rate. We're doing XYZ business with you. And they go, oh, well, just send us a bill and we'll see. They want to see how much they don't have to cut your rate. They want to show savings, but they don't want to show too much savings. So it is what it is, and that's a business strategy that you'll have to do. But I could definitely tell you that you can very easily get down to in the 1%. Just say 1.25 to 1.9. Really, it all depends on your volume.
Yeah, I'd say 1/4 it's pretty unrealistic. 1.9 is probably possible for a company with some significant volume.
Yeah, it all comes down to volume. I mean, if you're only doing 100,000, that's not a whole lot. But if you're doing 500,000, all of a sudden they get more interested.
Right.
Well, I got a question as just an ISP here who is currently being robbed by merchant services with Intuit.
Yeah.
I bought a hotspot solution from Dennis, and part of that was signing up with authorize.net. Mm-hmm. Okay? So say I convert over to a billing solution, why would I need that third-party company to be sucking money out of my pocket if I've got authorize.net already dumping money into my account?
Well, that's a different one. And Bill, do you want to take this, or do you want me to?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just an education thing. AuthorizeNet exists for one reason and one reason only. They're just a means. They're middleware between applications such as BillMax and other any application really, whether it's a physical terminal or whether it's software somewhere in the cloud or whatever. It's just a link between that and the merchant processing networks in the back end. Now, so with something like AuthorizeNet, yeah, you do pay a monthly fee and then some number of cents typically per transaction to process through them. The advantage is, you can use AuthorizeNet in thousands and thousands of applications, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, you do pay a little bit more versus a gateway a system such like IP Pay, for instance, where the gateway and the merchant services are bundled together. Okay, so you can sometimes pay a premium, but the real difference, as Dennis has already mentioned, is the so-called discount rate. The amount they're charging you. Whether it's 1.9 or 2.8 or whatever, that discount rate is where the real savings are. And sometimes you can get a good merchant account deal and use AuthorizeNet and be ahead. So it just depends. So I know that it seems like, why would I use AuthorizeNet? There are some circumstances where it actually might make sense for you.
As not only the payment gateway, but also the merchant service? Is that what you're saying?
No, they are not merchant service. So when you use AuthorizeNet and you establish an account, by the way, we resell AuthorizeNet, so I have a little interest in that. But when you do that, you basically plug in your merchant services ID into their profile.
Okay, so you're shopping for a decent merchant service as well as a gateway.
Yeah, so
Okay.
One advantage is, let's say, for instance, you're going to go out on the market and you're going to talk to the thousands of people that are offering merchant services, and they are literally thousands, right? They're reseller upon reseller, and there's all sorts of opportunity for people to take your money, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you do your shopping, you can get negotiate your best rate, and then with confidence know, if your billing system, whatever it is you're using, supports AuthorizeNet, then you're good to go, right? Mm-hmm. You can link everything up, establish the accounts, and off you go. And then down the road, should you decide to switch merchant service providers because maybe they jacked up your rates, well, then you can repeat that process, but nothing has to change on your billing system. You don't have to go back to your billing vendor and say, oh, by the way, do you support Gateway Y, or Z? So, there are some circumstances where, some advantages to using some sort of generic gateway like AuthorizeNet.
Uh-huh. Well, that kind of cleared up my whole conundrum about, if I've got AuthorizeNet, why do I need that third-party merchant service? But it's that merchant Let me just see if I'm getting this right.
Yeah.
You use the Authorize.net as the payment gateway. They're the
glue.
And then it goes to the merchant service people, and they take all the juice out of it, and then you get the money in your account.
That's correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now,
so
what happens is, typically with AuthorizeNet, this is like a technical detail. People don't really realize that you actually need several merchant accounts. Okay, if you're going to process Visa and MasterCard, you need that one. Okay, if you're going to process American Express, well, you need a separate merchant account with American Express. Same thing with Discover. Okay, so you could have upwards to 3 merchant services accounts, right? Mm-hmm. If you're accepting all those cards. So, the going with AuthorizeNet, all that's, or IP Pay, all of that is transparent to you in terms of setup. You don't really need to worry about those details. But just know that if you're accepting those cards, you have to have separate merchant accounts with those companies.
Got you. And typically, these thousands of people willing to take your money, like you said, would they bundle those 3 if you want to accept those 3?
Yeah, they do. What generally happens is you usually shop for. You're going to. You're not shopping so much for American Express and Discover. They're basically going to dictate the rates. What you're really shopping for more than anything is Visa and MasterCard, and essentially they hand off those transactions. Visa, MasterCard, the setup hands those off to the appropriate merchant service provider, depending on the card type.
Right. Well, I want to change gears a little bit here, unless you have something more, Bill.
No, I mean, that's delving too much into the details.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Let's move on.
Dennis brought up a good thing, the secret sauce, your unique selling proposition. What sets you apart from competitors that you mentioned?
Yeah, thanks for asking, because I wanted to mention a little bit about kind of what's out there in the industry, and then I'll delve down into what makes us different. When I started in this business, and I think everybody does this. When you're starting out, you're just trying to get every customer you can find, and you're willing to say and try to do everything that the customer wants or needs. And that's sort of like trying to be all things to all people. Well, you can't do that very well successfully. At some point, it sort of unravels a bit, and so you really need to kind of concentrate on what your core strengths are, whether it's because you're an ISP or because you're a billing vendor. So that's one of the lessons we learned when over the 20 years that we've been in business. So what makes us different in BillMax? Well, we are built on open source, so we're using open source technologies. We use MySQL as a database, for instance. We use Apache as a web server. We're running on Linux, specifically CentOS operating system. And wherever possible, we're deploying open source technologies, a euphemism for free technologies. So when you're going with us, you had the benefit of not only lower costs because of that, no extra licensing fees, whatnot, for a database, for instance. But you also had the advantage of really already being well positioned for plug and play and a better degree of integration with other systems because of it. So when you get BillMax, you're going to get an application that's, from A to Z will do all the things that you would expect of a billing system for ISPs. You're going to get billing, you're going to get customer care, ticketing, you're going to get payment processing, you're going to get all of that automated, and you're going to get subscriber provisioning. So you're going to get all of that day one, we basically essentially sell one core package. And once you have that, you have a capability. But we're unique in this sense that we provide the majority of source for our applications. So along with the binaries and the CGIs and the various components of our system, of which there are literally hundreds, you'll get the source for a great majority of it. So, if you're a tinkerer or you're a company that wants to build best-of-breed systems, and you want to use BillMax as your core, we're a perfect fit for you, right? So if you're a company that has already got your operational systems and networks in place and radius and things of that nature, then and you're looking for something to kind of drive it all from the CRM or from the billing perspective, we're a perfect fit for companies like that.
Now, earlier in the show, you mentioned, a module for scheduling and stuff like that. Like you said, you guys focus on billing, but being that it's open source, if someone found something they like, is it relatively, being open source, that's something that they like, is it relatively easy to integrate that with the BillMax product?
It is. I mean, again, the devil's always in the details with something like that. But as I said, you have the capability. We have a number of different APIs or programming interfaces to affect that kind of change or that integration. Whereas some other competitors may be kind of more of a closed system.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they're not closed, they kind of discourage you from making modifications, because it's more work for them ultimately to support.
So, in working in the field with the several, I'm sure, 100 people you work with, have you come up with some neat stuff that they've come up with that they've allowed you to integrate, or ideas?
What happens is the way we work in that area is, our clients will come to us because we, BillMax is really amalgamation of all the ideas over the number of years that people have, brought to us. So we have a wealth of sort of institutional knowledge built into the system, that we've obtained from our clients over a number of years. But really, when clients come to us with some change or some idea or something to integrate with, we try our darndest to get that integration wrapped into the product so that it's not something they have to support going forward. Right.
Right.
And we work with our clients on price whenever they have these kinds of work that they'd already prior done or certainly work that they want us to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing that's interesting about what we're doing is, and this gets a little wonky and techie right here, but we actually deploy our own source control systems at each BillMax instance. And we use that in a way so that our customers can modify their systems to their heart's content in a way such that whenever we do an update, there's an upgrade, right, that our changes won't overwrite theirs, essentially. So it's a really clever way of people being able to make modifications without having to reintroduce them after an upgrade. So we spend a lot of time on that kind of stuff. Those are. So I would say, to answer your question, you're talking about the special sauce. That's one thing that sets us apart. Is really the open source, the ability to integrate. Think of BillMax as a toolkit as well as an application.
Gotcha.
Now, the other things where BillMax, I think, is different really from some of the competition is really the attention to detail when it comes to the financial aspects of the system. Okay, we spent really quite a few man years in development over the time we've been in business, sort of honing and improving the financial aspects to our system. And this is the devil in the detail thing again that. If you're just kicking the tires, you might not notice, but they're important. They're important aspects, and so you when you're evaluating systems, you want to know some of these things we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you some examples. Right. For instance, one of the things we do is we track each financial transaction. In our database, we're actually tracking the service period. So we know we can look at financial transactions and know at a glance, why that charge is on the account and what it's for. Now, obviously, I'm talking about service billing and not one-time sales. But you might think that's not all that important, but when you're trying to figure out an account's history and trying to work out if it was billed properly, having that information is really important. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is it allows you to do things like deferred revenue reporting, which is probably unique to us. That's really a means by where you can account for the revenue that you may have already obtained, but you haven't earned yet. And what I'm talking about is those cases where you might bill somebody for a year, right?
Yeah.
And you're only 2 months into it. So you've got 2 months of realized revenue, but you're on the hook for 10 months for the remainder of the year. Well, you say, why is that important? Well, as it turns out, accountants really want to know that information. And if you've got some angel investors or a bank that's invested in your company, they want to see those numbers. They want to know what the liability is at any given point, and they want to know what revenue is really earned and what isn't. We have a large client in California that is precisely in this predicament where they have to report this sort of information to the bank, and so if you have that requirement, this is a situation where you would have to do more than kick the tire to see if the billing vendor supported this kind of activity. Mm-hmm. So it's things like that. Our taxing algorithms, for instance, are as sophisticated as they come in industry. We can tax based on the nexus of not only the location, but the type of service. So think of sales tax versus VoIP, for instance. Okay, radically different kinds of sales. Mm-hmm. Sales tax. I shouldn't use sales tax in that context, but a radically different tax in general for VoIP versus your general sales tax. Different set of rules, different set of requirements. So we're unique in that way, in that we can handle taxing based on location and type of service, as well as multiple tax items. So if you're in a jurisdiction where you've got state, county, city, and then MTA taxes and stuff like that, well, you can either model that in our system as a combined tax, which is what a lot of people end up doing because their billing system doesn't support it otherwise. But or you could literally break that out and show that level of detail on invoices, as well as pay that level of detail when it comes to paying your taxes to the taxing authorities.
So that sounds like right there a secret sauce, or something that makes you unique.
Yeah, I mean, and those are just several examples. I could kind of go on and on, but I'm sure I'm boring people. But those are things that, at the end of the day, they're really important. And we have decided to concentrate on those aspects of our system and make sure that what we consider the core supports everything that you would ever need to do. Where we don't really spend a lot of time is we do service provisioning, and what I mean by that is any setup that's required to enable, disable, or change the state of a customer service, we support that in BillMax. It's built in, right? But we're not really we're not a general provisioning engine in the sense that we're going to change a router setting or something like that.
Right.
We don't really, not that you couldn't do it in BillMax, it's just that we don't generally spend our time working on that. So, if that's something you want to do, our provisioning engine is open-ended. I tell people if you have, if you have an API for making apples, well, then you can make apples in BillMax. because it really is general purpose. We haven't made any assumptions as what it is you need to provision.
Right.
So anyway, what I'm trying to tell you is, if you're, we're not going to have today at least. We're not choosing solutions or technology. We don't feel like we're and having an out-of-the-box solution from A to Z for everything that you'd ever need in an ISP. We don't feel like we could guess the right technology, number one. Number two, we don't feel like you can get best of breed that way.
Right.
Number three, you're kind of locked into your vendor at that point.
Sure.
So, our stick is concentrate on core billing, accounting, customer service, ticketing. We definitely integrate with other products like tower coverage, Dennis's thing, as well as Server Plus and a number of other systems. And so it's not like we're an island to ourselves. There's quite a bit that we're doing in that, that we currently already integrate with. But I'm just trying to give you a lay of the land in terms of, if you're looking for us to provide bandwidth management built in, no, we would work with other vendors and your existing systems to do that. We don't generally provide that out of the box.
Right. Well, before we wrap up with the show, I have one more question.
Yes, sir.
How do you guys make monthly money? Do you bill a set amount for the service, or do you bill on a per subscriber basis?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I a lot of people may be relatively new relative to us in the industry, and just a little bit of history. When everybody started out doing this in the billing side of things, people were selling their products for a one-time fee, and then selling optional support. Well, that's a model that just doesn't work very well, because it's no secret that for the smaller ISP, the margins, and for us, the margins are pretty slim.
Yep.
And so times get tough. The first thing they do is they drop a support contract. Okay, so then you've sold your product, which, in BillMax's case, is a pretty daggone good product that can last you upwards to 2 decades. And I know this because we still have people using the first version of BillMax.
Mm-hmm.
They're still using it. And, we licensed that way and we sold it that way, and they have it. And that's good. That's a deal we made with them. But it's really not sustainable in the long run. You really have to have a recurring business model. And so thankfully, all the remaining vendors plus all the new ones that came along with the advent of the WISP industry, pretty much everyone is a recurring business model. So you're leasing the software essentially. And so that's true of BillMax. So we do lease based on the number of active subscribers that you have.
And is that active subscribers that pay you?
Oh, no. I mean, it's the number of active subscribers that our customers have. So if you're a WISP and you have 1,000 subs, for instance, right, there would be a monthly fee from us. It's not a simple formula as like we charge, $1 per subscriber or something like that. It's more of a block.
I guess I'm sorry for the confusion. I guess what I'm saying is, so like me, I've got some people in my QuickBooks that are there just as placeholders, like I trade out service for their relay site. In the case of BillMax, would I be billed for that free account, or is it based on number of actual people that pay you money?
Oh, I see. I'm sorry, I misunderstood. The licensing that we do is based on, and I think this is pretty common, the concept of an active subscriber. Okay.
Gotcha.
So if that account is that end customer account in the billing system in BillMax is in an open or suspended state, isn't in a closed state, they're going to count against your license.
Gotcha.
So that's actually kind of important because in our system, we don't ever actually remove anybody. Customers, if they leave you for whatever reason, they've moved, whatnot, you close them and they remain for financial reporting purposes for no other reason. Or, maybe perhaps they come back, in which case you can reopen the account.
Sure.
But the point is, it's really the active subscribers that we're looking at.
Gotcha.
And in terms of price, very competitive. I think we don't spend a lot of time looking what the other vendors are doing, but we do know that in general, from what we understand, that we're at a lower price point than a lot of our competition.
Good to know.
And so we think we represent excellent value. Now the thing is, we get a lot of people who call us up, and the first thing they want to do is talk about price, and that pains me because they're missing the bigger picture.
Yes.
As to the amount of savings that a system like BillMax or one of our competitors can do for you. it's a savings in manpower. It's a savings in reduction of mistakes.
Yes.
It's a savings in and getting paid on time and keeping your
Cash
AR down and managing your cash flow better.
Yep.
It's all of that. And, if you're looking at, it costs me $300 a month more than what I was paying before. That you're just not looking at it in a rational way.
Right.
So I would encourage everybody to kind of look at the big picture. And, in some cases, the savings are real. I mean, they're real anyway. What I'm trying to say is, in some cases, like the example of the merchant services and moving off of QuickBooks, that's an example where you can actually see the numbers, right? As opposed to, I'm no longer, before I had to have 2 billing people, and now I'm doing the same with 1 billing person. You can obviously see the effect of bottom line on that as well.
Yep. Well, Bill, I appreciate you on the show. I know you are busy, and it's about time to wrap up the show. Dennis, you got any other questions?
No, I think we're really good. I think we covered a lot about the product, and I hope everybody contacts Bill. Actually, the last thing before we wrap up would be, Bill, how can they get a hold of you if they're interested in your product?
Well, we're on the web. It would be BillMax.com, www.BillMax.com, and you can certainly also email us at support or sales at BillMax.com, or you can give us a call.
That's BILLMAX?
Yeah.
Okay.
BILLMAX.com. And, there were a lot of topics. I'm sorry. I feel like it maybe gone too long and maybe bored some people. But, give us a call, whether it's, you want to chat about, best practices or ideas or whatnot, because, we do have that institutional knowledge, and that's kind of what you get with us when you engage in using our product. You're going to get the product as well as the benefit of nearly 20 years of experience and kind of what works well and what doesn't.
Yep.
And we're happy to share that information, whether you become a customer of ours or not. We obviously like to have you, but if anything that you want to ask, certainly give us a shout. We'll be happy to chat with you about it.
Well, again, thank you, Bill, for being on our show. And with that, Dennis, if you want to wrap it up, we're done.
Thank you for listening to ISP Radio. We hope you've gained new insights and additional wisdom in our industry as well as your business. Please remember to visit our show sponsors via the links on ispradio.com. If you're interested in becoming a show sponsor, contact us at sales@ispradio.com. Now go out there and push those packets as fast as you can. Good luck and Godspeed.